Everyone, this is another example of how to solve stoichiometry problems. So remember, step one is underline your given and unknown. So when I read the problem, it's 25 grams of aluminum sulfide. And so my given is 25 grams of aluminum sulfide. Remember the whole thing, number, unit stuff. So 25 grams of aluminum sulfide. And then we're going to go ahead and look for our unknown. An unknown is how many grams of sulfur. So grams of sulfur is my unknown. So it's question mark grams of sulfur. Okay, so this problem is a little bit different than the previous one. Now here the two substances are different. So here is where we're actually figuring out how much of one thing we're going to need if we have adjusted the amount of the previous thing. Okay, so anytime you're in a kitchen, you need a recipe. Okay, so our recipe is a chemical equation. It's 2 aluminums combined with 3 moles of sulfur to make 1 mole of aluminum sulfide. Notice those parentheses in there are for your balanced masses. They're not given here. So before we go ahead and start setting up our equation, I'm going to figure those out. So 2 moles of aluminum, 2 moles of aluminum are equal to 54 grams. 3 moles of sulfur is equal to 96 grams, and 1 mole of aluminum sulfide is equal to 150 grams. Okay, so when we set up our first ratio, the first ratio needs to come from the recipe, from your balance equation. That's where you start when you start cooking. So we need to combine grams of aluminum sulfide and grams of sulfur into our ratio. We know that aluminum is still part of that equation, but the aluminum is not mentioned in this problem, so we just ignore it. So grams of aluminum sulfide, that's this guy. So 150 grams. So for 150 grams of aluminum sulfide, there is grams of sulfur is the second relationship, and that's 96 grams of sulfur. And that equals to second fraction, second ratio comes from our actual givens and unknowns. Our given is 25 grams of aluminum sulfide. And since I need to make sure that my units line up, I'm going to put that one on the top. Okay. And then my unknown is grams of sulfur. So question mark grams of sulfur. We're going to go ahead and cross multiply. So that's 96 grams of sulfur times 25 grams of aluminum sulfide, and divide all of that by 150 grams of aluminum sulfide. Cross off all the units. So in this case, those guys will cross off, and you will be, apologize. Got a little bit ahead of myself here. So the units that cancel will be this guy and this guy, and then we will be left with units of grams of sulfur. You should end up with 16 grams of sulfur when you do your math. All the answers are given for you in boxes. Remember, focus on the strategy. Okay, thank you.